1. Eswatini Outraged as US deports foreign criminals, a global controversy. 2. US deports migrants to Eswatini in controversial third country program, human rights concerns. 1. Eswatini Outraged as US deports foreign criminals, a global controversy. Imagine this, a small African nation, already battling poverty and human rights challenges, suddenly becomes the reluctant host for foreign criminals deported from the United States. That's the explosive reality unfolding in Eswatini right now, igniting fury across the continent. Here's the full picture you need to understand this diplomatic firestorm. Fueled by outrage, citizens across Africa are reacting to the confirmed arrival of US deportees in Eswatini, a nation roughly the size of New Jersey governed by an absolute monarch. Officials acknowledge widespread public alarm but insist 5 foreign nationals currently isolated in Eswatini's prisons pose no threat. But here's where it gets controversial. A U.S. Department of Homeland Security spokesperson publicly branded these individuals as depraved monsters, while critics vehemently protest Eswatini being treated as a dumping ground for people America doesn't want. This deportation resulted from months of robust high-level engagements between the U.S. and Eswatini, according to acting government spokesperson Deborah Luli. Yet the move spotlights a broader, contentious pattern. While Trump's deportations to El Salvador prisons made global headlines, the White House has quietly pressured multiple African nations to accept deportees originally from other countries. Nigeria's foreign minister openly accused the U.S. of leveraging tariffs and visa restrictions to coerce African nations into accepting Venezuelan deportees straight from U.S. prisons, a claim the U.S. mission in Nigeria denies, insisting visa changes aim to safeguard U.S. immigration systems. Here's the part that sparks heated debate. The Supreme Court recently enabled Trump's administration to deport migrants to non-home countries with minimal notice. This cleared the path for 8 third-country deportees with criminal records to land in South Sudan, a nation teetering on civil war's edge. Similarly, Eswatini now houses 5 convicts from Jamaica, Laos, Cuba, Yemen, and Vietnam, imprisoned for crimes including child rape, murder, and robbery. A DHS official claimed their home nations refused them, declaring on social media, "These depraved monsters have been terrorizing American communities, but thanks to POTUS Trump they are off of American soil." But here's the uncomfortable truth critics emphasize: Eswatini, with just over 1 million residents, struggles with extreme poverty. Over half the population survives on under $4 daily, unemployment, congested prisons, and deteriorating human rights. Opposition groups warn accepting violent deportees poses a serious risk to our already vulnerable communities battling high crime rates. Lucky Luke Hill of the Swaziland Solidarity Network put it bluntly: "It's clear racism to think Africa is a dumping ground for Donald Trump." And this is where it gets morally complex. Despite public backlash over portraying Eswatini as a safe third country, the government won't disclose what it gains from the deal. Ndluli called the agreement terms classified information, even as Eswatini faces looming U.S. tariffs threatening its economy. South African sources speculate the deportations might intentionally destabilize their nation via porous borders, with one diplomat calling it a direct national security threat. Georgetown professor Ken Opolo cautions African nations against expecting credible commitments from such transactional U.S. deals. So we're left with burning questions: is exporting criminals to fragile nations a legitimate immigration solution or a dangerous evasion of responsibility? Does this practice cross ethical lines by exploiting vulnerable countries? What responsibility does the U.S. bear for prisoners it labels monsters but dumps abroad? Share your take below. Do you see this as necessary border security or a reckless disregard for global justice? 2. U.S. deports migrants to Eswatini in controversial third country program, human rights concerns. Alarm bells ring as U.S. deports migrants to Eswatini, a country with a troubling human rights record. Imagine being deported to a country you've never set foot in, only to be thrown into solitary confinement with no end date in sight. This is the harsh reality for 5 migrants who were recently deported from the US to Eswatini, a small southern African nation, under the Trump administration's contentious third country program. According to Deports, a spokesperson for the Eswatini government, the 5 men will be held in solitary confinement for an undetermined period. Citing security concerns, Deports declined to disclose the correctional facility's location. However, local media outlets have identified the Matsife Correctional Complex, outside the administrative capital of Mbabane, as the likely detention site. This maximum security prison has raised concerns in the past due to its poor conditions. But here's where it gets more complicated. The Eswatini government claims it plans to repatriate the migrants to their home countries with the assistance of the International Organization for Migration, IOM, a UN agency dedicated to upholding human rights in migration management. Yet, the IOM has explicitly stated that it was not involved in the migrants' removal from the US and has not been contacted to facilitate their return home. A web of uncertainty and concern. The 5 migrants, hailing from Vietnam, Jamaica, Cuba, Yemen, and Laos, were convicted of severe crimes, including murder and child rape, according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. U.S. officials assert that the migrants' home countries refused to take them back, leading to their deportation to Eswatini. And this is the part most people miss. The U.S. State Department's latest human rights report on Eswatini highlights alarming concerns, including arbitrary killings, torture, and cruel treatment by the government. Prison conditions are marked by overcrowding, disrepair, poor nutrition, and unchecked violence. A pattern of controversy. The Trump administration's practice of sending deportees to countries grappling with political and human rights crises has sparked international outcry. Earlier this month, the U.S. deported 8 immigrants to South Sudan, a country plagued by political instability and a hunger crisis. Similarly, over 200 Venezuelan men deported to El Salvador remain incarcerated in the notorious mega prison Sicotte, where detainees have reported facing torture. The silence is deafening. Eswatini's agreement to accept the migrants remains shrouded in mystery, with the government spokesperson citing classified terms. Similarly, South Sudan has refused to disclose details about its agreement with the U.S. or the whereabouts of the 8 deported men. Even Tom Homan, the U.S. border czar, admitted to being in the dark about the fate of the South Sudan deportees. We want to hear from you. Do you think the U.S. is justified in deporting migrants to countries with questionable human rights records, or is this a blatant disregard for human dignity? Should international organizations like the IOM play a more proactive role in ensuring the safe repatriation of migrants? Share your thoughts and concerns in the comments below. Sources: Associated Press, Reuters.